absolutely consistent. Narcissism is clearly associated with aggression. Now, some of you may be thinking, okay, you can say that as big as you want, Dr. Romani. Big surprise! I already knew that. But the fact is, maybe we did suspect that, but in the world of science and of policy, individual stories aren't enough. This study is groundbreaking because the authors were able to show very clearly that this association is universal. This is no longer a speculation. I mean, the scientist in me needs to see the data, and these researchers were able to show it. The real brilliance of this article, though, is that because they looked at so many studies, they could look at these issues of, for example, of aggression and narcissism measured in so many different ways. When they looked at aggression, they framed it in different ways, including physical aggression, verbal aggression, direct expression of aggression, for example, directly aggressing against a victim who is right in front of the aggressor, and indirect aggression, for example, a smear campaign against someone. An important component of aggression that they captured is something called displaced aggression as well. Think of that as being in the presence of someone who's having a rageful episode that you witness, but that rageful episode is not necessarily directed at you. And they also captured under aggression both online and in-person bullying and online trolling, or provoking people online. All of these things taken together accurately were captured under their definition of aggression. Now, one thing that was particularly striking to me was that the authors observed comparable associations between grandiose narcissism and aggression and covert/vulnerable narcissism. They found it, and aggression. They found it regardless of the type of narcissism. Another important finding is that narcissism was also associated with something called reactive aggression. Reactive aggression is provocation-based aggression, as well as what they call proactive aggression, which is to aggress against someone without provocation, but instead you do it because of some other incentive, maybe to gain advantage or to dominate someone. And they found a comparably strong association between narcissism and actual violence, meaning that narcissism is a risk factor, as we call it, for dangerous and violent behavior. Interestingly, Dr. Bushman's other research, he was one of the authors on this paper, has also done his own prior research suggesting that narcissism is a risk factor for mass shootings, something many of us who do this work on narcissism have suspected for a long time, and he was able to pull together the data and the science on that. There's long been a belief that narcissistic people are hot-headed, meaning that they're aggressive when they feel provoked. Where this study that I'm talking about was so striking is that, yes, that is true, but they also found that the narcissistic personality is associated with aggression even when there is no provocation. So that actually raises the risk level associated with this personality style. Provocation does matter because provocation does in fact increase narcissistic aggression, which holds up a model that other people have brought up of this idea that aggression is an ego-protecting stance in narcissistic people. That's something that's been suggested by other past researchers like Ray Baumeister. But since the research suggests that even in the absence of provocation, there is aggression, ego protection is not the only function that aggression is serving. A really fascinating cultural finding also emerged in their research. Narcissism was associated with violence and aggression, regardless of whether it was conducted in a collectivistic or individualistic culture. Now, the authors were very clear to point out that much less of this research has been conducted in collectivistic cultures, but in those studies that were, they found similar associations. The traditional belief that's often been out there is that this idea of collectivism, that this may be protective against this link between narcissism and aggression, that didn't bear out. And in that way, the association between narcissism and aggression supersedes all the protections of a collectivistic cultural bias. This goes beyond a message that in an individualistic culture where it's every person for themselves, this suggests that there's something embedded within the narcissistic individual, regardless of whether the culture is about the group or the individual. Now, when I read this study again and again, and I've even had the pleasure of corresponding with the authors about it, which was a tremendous honor, what struck me is the danger we have in society when we minimize and when we play down the impacts of this personality style. The tendency that we have of just sort of lightheartedly viewing narcissism as just sort of vain, arrogant, preening, and pretentious, but nothing beyond that. This research suggests, one more brick in that wall, that this is dangerous. There are so many important implications in the findings of this research paper. In the area, for example, of domestic violence, intimate partner violence, family violence, this implies that the unique dangers of narcissism in these spaces, because since the nature of intimate relationships, the closeness, imply that there's going to be a greater likelihood of these so-called provocation episodes, even about small issues, and then a risk of even more violence. In the area of workplace violence, there is the implication in these research findings that narcissism is going to result in more dangerous workplaces. In the area of public safety, for example, Dr. Bushman's work on mass shootings and narcissism suggests the risks that are inherent in that. In our day-to-day lives, that narcissism is actually something that is essential for legal and justice systems to understand, for politicians to understand, for policymakers to understand, for public health officials to understand, and for educators to understand, and above all else, for mental health practitioners and researchers to understand. I have no idea what the hell prevention looks like when it comes to narcissism. Let's face it, narcissism isn't against the law, but it sure is a risk factor for lots of dangerous illegal behavior and dangerous behavior in general. However, there is very little, I believe, we can do to prevent it, because that would require a wholesale takeover of parenting and early childhood development. Good luck with that. Now, this isn't just about an annoying or gaslighting partner. That's not all that narcissism's about. It's not just about a manipulative parent or a cheating ex. This paper suggests that narcissism is about a real societal danger associated with a personality pattern that society is more often than not likely to enable. We make narcissistic people our leaders, our heroes, and we view their lives as aspirational. We are, in essence, revering the very patterns associated with personalities that make the world a more dangerous place. If ever science was a wake-up call, it's in this article. Now, the full citation for this article, for those of you who are interested in the research, or students or therapists or academics, go pull it, because the reference is there. I can't recommend it enough. It is one of the most important pieces of work I have read in years. Really, congratulations and gratitude to Drs. Kiravik and Bushman for this work. Those of you who are interested in it, really take this article in, because the data, all of it, is some of the most compelling stuff I've read in a while. It always helps when we suspect something in the world of narcissism, when people put in the years of work, and I know this work took them years to do, to really show that the data supports a link here. And the more we have these supportive links through the data, the more that there may someday, probably long after I'm dead and gone, but there may someday be a willingness to see these patterns and understand them. So we might actually be able to help people who find themselves in these situations, help them not only become safer, but possibly create policy that might potentially make this world a safer place. Thanks again. Hi everyone, it's Dr. Romney, and welcome back to this YouTube channel that takes on all kinds of little issues related to narcissistic relationships. So some of you are thinking, I've watched so many of your dad videos lately. I get this. I really get this now. Well, now I'm gonna let you know. In a way, you're kind of screwed once the narcissist knows that you know. So let's take that apart and really lay out what that means for you. So this relates to a consistent question I get from people all the time via the comments or emails or whatever. Is, do narcissists know? Do narcissists know that they're narcissistic or difficult? And maybe even more important is the question of, do narcissists really know how insecure they are? Because clearly this person's insecure. Do they know? The answer to that is ish. Remember that shame, rage spiral I talk about so often? Narcissistic people aren't demented or frankly delusional. They are able to see that there are consequences to their behavior.
I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and this is PsycHacks, Better Living Through Psychology. And the topic of today's short talk is how to be a man. It's a simple question, and one that 100 years ago would be ludicrous to ask, because back then, everyone just sort of knew what the answer was. But here we are in modern times, characterized, among other things, by an identity crisis in men. How we got here is extremely complex, but here is where we are. Now, some forms of masculinity, such as machismo masculinity, are fairly complex. This is because they are performances of an unwritten etiquette with evolving rules and standards. However, this form of masculinity, as much as femininity, is essentially performative. Neither is a natural suite of behaviors, and each is an expression of a particular time and place. These forms of masculinity and femininity can be learned, and skillful execution of their respective suites of behaviors both express and confirm status in men and women. Many of the answers you'll hear on the internet to the question of how to be a man correspond with performative masculinity. They are things that you can do to signify your man status with props, costumes, and postures. These could be things like grow a beard, lift heavy stuff, start a business, go fishing, go hunting, learn to start a fire, learn to drive a manual transmission, learn to seduce women, learn to fight, learn to shoot a gun, learn to grill a ribeye steak, talk knowledgeably about sports, drink beer and appreciate whiskey, etc. Now, I don't have a problem with any of those things. A lot of them sound fun and could prove beneficial to the individual in question. However, I do think that all of those responses suffer from defining masculinity essentially as a suite of behaviors, as a performance. Now, I have a different take on this question. As you can see, I'm not a guy who's very performatively masculine. I work with words in a very feminized profession. I've never played football, or scaled a fish, or roped a calf. However, when it comes down to it, I'm extremely masculine. And this is because what it means to be a man is very simple and only marginally associated with what you do or what you look like. Are you ready? To be a man is very simple. You need only two things. You need a spine and you need some balls. That's it. If you have a spine and you have some balls, then you're a man. And just so we're clear, I'm not talking literally. All humans have a spine, and all males have balls. What I'm talking about is a spine and a pair figuratively. It's simple, but not necessarily easy. Let's talk about each one individually, shall we? First, what does it mean to have a spine? A spine means that you are willing to stand up. Anatomically, you need a spine to stand erect. Figuratively, you need a spine to stand up for what you believe to be true, which is, in your heart of hearts, who you are. And this, of course, presupposes that you actually know which you believe to be true, and this ain't easy. Most of the things in your head were put there by other people, and a lot of that stuff is total garbage. For most people, it takes years and years of patient self-study to learn what they believe to be true. So young guys get a pass here, though it's important to acknowledge that we tend to make their jobs harder by filling them up with so much distracting nonsense to begin with. However, there are many older guys, men who I speak with on a regular basis, who don't know what their values are, don't know what they believe to be true, and consequently don't know who the fuck they are. And how are you going to stand up for something if you don't know what that something is? Now, before I go any further, if you're liking what you're hearing, then please consider sending this episode to someone who might...
Alright guys, this is just gonna be a very quick video. Today I'm going to talk about the most important thing that you need to learn, most important concept that you need to learn when it comes to figure drawing. That is seeing everything in masses. So what do I mean by masses? Masses means forms. Masses means forms. And forms only have 5 different types. That is the cylinder, the sphere rather, the cube, the third is the cylinder, the fourth one is the pyramid, and the last form is a cone. So the moment you see things in these 5 distinct forms, you will be able to draw any figure, no matter what angle, no matter if it's a creature, no matter if it's a humanoid, if it's hyperrealism, it doesn't matter. Once you are able to break things down, first you have to see things in these 5 distinct forms. After that, you will now break them down into these 5 distinct forms. So what do I mean by that? So let's say for example you're drawing the human body. No creature, no humanoid, no robots. If you look at a human body, the biggest passes in the human body are the rib cage, which can be simplified to an egg, and the pelvis, which can be simplified into a cylinder. Okay. So once you identify these 2 things, which are the egg and the cylinder, or the sphere in the cylinder, then you will have an easy time in adding all of the other features, such as the limbs, which are the arms, legs, because from this, everything connects. So let's say for example, this one is in profile. Profile view. If you're gonna make this a very standard pose, of course, you can put here a cylinder that will signify the neck. Okay, like that. And on this part, we can now put the legs. We can now attach the legs. Like that. Okay. So let's draw the other leg. Okay, so as you can see, you can build up from there, and everything, every part of the human body can be broken down into 5 basic forms and masses. Over here we can add the wall of the humerus. Okay. Over here we can add the patella, or the head of the tibia and the fibula. Say for example, this figure is tiptoe. Okay. I'm gonna put a cube here as the base for the foot. Same goes here. Cube as a base for the foot. And then we're gonna do a pyramid for the actual foot. For this one, we're gonna make it a little bit slanted. Yeah. Now for the arms, it can be simplified into a cylinder, simple cylinder. Another sphere for the joint of the humerus, the wall of the humerus. Another sphere for the right arm. Another sphere as a connecting joint for the forearm. Over here we can add another sphere, another cylinder rather. And from here, you can basically see the pose of the figure. Over here, we can add another ball for the joint. And another cylinder for the forearm. And with that, basically, anything can be built up from basic forms and masses. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. From this, we already have 9 cylinders. Actually 10, scratch that. We have 10, including the pelvis. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 spheres. We have 1, 2 cubes. Now I'm just going to erase this so we can finish the figure. Now for the head, I usually make them kind of a cube at first, and then I modify them to make it an actual head. Now we can adjust the length of the neck. That is quite too lengthy. Okay. Now we can draw the head. Alright, now it kind of looks a little bit more normal. And for the arm, it's just another cube. Now for the fingers, it's more nuanced, but to simplify it, they are just cylinders. Alright. So with this, as you can see, everything is just basic shapes and forms. Now, for some of the areas like the lower leg, you can see that there are quite some variations, some sort of variations, but you will learn them along the way. For example,
because it's word of mouth referrals like this that really help to make the channel grow. You can also hit the super thanks button. It's those three little dots in the lower right hand corner and tip me in proportion to the value you believe you've received from this video. Your support makes all of this happen, so thank you. Now, the question is, if the general truths about hypergamy are correct, why doesn't this strategy work? It's simple. In the act of trying to impress a woman, you will inevitably reveal more and more details about... about who you actually are and how you actually live. And the likelihood that any of those details will actually correspond with the fantasy that any particular woman has in her mind about who she wants you to be or hopes you could be are functionally zero. At this stage of the game, your actual self has a near zero probability of according with the woman's private fantasy about who you might be. And remember, it's the fantasy that is actually motivating her to be there in order to explore the possibility of some kind of future together. Men, you do not want to disabuse a woman of her fantasy of who you are too quickly. And every time you open your mouth, you chip away at that fantasy a little bit more with every word that you say. Most men blow the first date because they spend way too much talking about themselves. My God. On a first date, the woman should ideally be doing the vast majority of the talking. As the man, all you really need to do is to provide her with interesting, emotionally compelling prompts so that she can spend most of the time talking about herself and experiencing her own emotions. Do this, and she will not only retain her original fantasy of you, but she will also become even more attracted by associating her felt experience with you. And this is something that you have to take the lead on, men, because if you don't, the date will likely devolve into a job interview where the woman's going to ask a lot of closed-ended, factual questions because she doesn't really know what she's doing, and walk away feeling that you were a nice guy, but she didn't really feel anything. The woman should be talking 3 to 4 times as much as you. Every once in a while, she will ask you a question. No problem. Answer it in brief, and then another open-ended question right back at her. If you do this correctly, she's going to walk away from the encounter feeling heard, feeling listened to, and having experienced all of these different emotions inside of herself. And that's going to significantly increase the chances that she'll want to see you. Ideally, at the end of an hour or two, when it's time to get up to leave, she's going to say, wow, the time just flew by, but I just talked about myself the whole time. There's still so much I don't know about you. And it's like, good. Because the longer we draw this out, the more likely that the woman is going to be willing to stick around once the fantasy she has of you is inevitably shattered. But if it's broken too soon, it's not going to work. And let me just say, this isn't about tricking women. At least, not any more than women's makeup and fashion is about tricking men. Women, why don't you show up on a first date in sweatpants without wearing makeup? Because you don't want to do anything to disturb the fantasy that the man might have of you too early in the courtship process? Maybe, I don't know. Otherwise, he's probably not going to stick around long enough to want to cultivate a relationship with you, possibly. You can show him later, once he's already hooked, right? So it's like, it works both ways. But this episode is about men, and men blow the first date by talking too much about themselves in their attempts to impress the woman. What do you think? Does this fit with your own experience? Let me know in the comments below. And if you've gotten this far, you might as well like this episode and subscribe to this channel. You may also consider becoming a channel member with perks like priority review of comments or booking a paid consultation. As always, thank you for listening.
Hello guys, it is me, Victoria, okay? So, for today's video, I want to talk about something very personal. I've wanted to make a video about this for a while, but it's embarrassing and extremely personal and honestly makes me vulnerable, and it's something I do not like to tell anyone, alright? But I feel it could be a very interesting video topic and very useful to certain people out there, mainly guys. So, alright, this is gonna get like a bit sexual, so if you're not interested in that, please stop watching now, okay? So basically, you know how guys see a girl differently, heterosexual guys, I'm talking about heterosexual people in this video, alright? So, you know how heterosexual guys, they see a girl differently than, like, a girl sees herself, okay? So, let's say, like, when guys go to a strip club versus, like, when girls go to a strip club. When girls go to a strip club, they're like, woo! And I'm talking about, like, female strippers, right? They're like, woo, this is so much fun, oh my god, we love you! And, like, you're amazing! And, like, they're giggling and they're having so much fun, right? When guys go, it's kind of more serious, because guys are feeling the feminine energy, if you will, a bit more strongly than women are, right? Women are thinking it's beautiful, and maybe they're getting a little bit of, like, sexy from the girls, and they're not really having the same reaction as guys are having. The guys are hypnotized. They're being put in a trance. Their hormones have gone, like, insane. And their hormones have given them, like, sex brain to the point where they're just almost out of control. Similarly, when I see a pair of boobs, I'm just like, okay, yeah, a pair of boobs, big whoop, very nice, or whatever. Like, when my boyfriend, for example, sees one, it's a totally different experience. I'm just like, I really don't get it. But that's kind of man goggles, you know what I'm saying? So, there's a very similar thing for women seeing men. But I really believe that a lot of men have no idea that women feel this way about guys. Because maybe not everyone does to the same degree, not all women feel this way to the same degree, but men have a sexual energy, a male energy too, that my point is that probably only women can see and feel and reflect back to them, and that they themselves, men, cannot really feel and see it in themselves. Now, the reason I had to make this video is because some of my male friends, like, they get really dejected and down because, you know, they have not had much luck with women. And maybe women have made fun of them in the past and said, like, they're unattractive in these certain ways, and they feel there is something defective about who they are, that they are just somehow fundamentally unattractive to women. And I myself have rejected a lot of guys, you know, back when I used to date, and I rejected a lot of guys for different reasons, okay? Maybe this one was too shy, maybe this one was too quiet. How ironic, right? Since I'm like the shyest thing. All guys have that, and it's not visible to them, but it is visible to women, alright? So even when a girl's rejecting you for this reason, she still senses your masculine power deep down. It's just the way you're acting or whatever isn't cool, or maybe you're not really unleashing and tapping into the power she knows you has, and she's just like, I can't wait around all day, I can't deal with this, you know what I'm saying? But all guys have it, even guys I've rejected. I have still felt and seen their attractive power. And I know that if they, almost like if they knew it was there, and they knew that I liked it, and they knew that I wanted it, and they unleashed it or turned it on or suddenly started to bring that out more, it would be dangerous for me, because then I would be vulnerable, because I would be able to be manipulated, and I would be kind of weak, if you know what I mean, because it's so attractive. So it would put me at like disadvantage. So I will never I would never point this out to a guy necessarily. I'm just like, you know what, dude, you're on your own, you figure it out, because I'm not going to make myself vulnerable to tell you that I still find you attractive, and I'm not going to tell you how you could bring it out of yourself. For example, I had this male friend, right, and I rejected him. We were dating. One time he got really angry at me in like a joking way, alright? And he really let like his masculine power that I always sensed under the surface out. And I got really turned on. But of course I did not tell him that, okay? But if he knew that, he knew that, you know, he could bring that out more, he could use that against me. So, what is this masculine power? It's difficult to put, you know, words to it, but it's an energy that all men have that's extremely powerful. It's raw, it's rough, it's the power of, there's this book, Mode 1, okay? And it's kind of talking about this. I recommend you all read it. Basically it said, if every man took a truth serum, and he said exactly what he thought, and he did exactly what he wanted, and he kind of didn't give a fuck anymore, and he said brutal, I guess, raw honesty about girls, like, you know, instead of just being like, you're beautiful, if what he was really thinking was like, oh my god, I would love to just like throw you down on this couch and fuck you right now or whatever, and it's like kind of raunchy and dirty, but that was what he was honestly feeling, that is attractive, alright? If he's angry and he acts angry, that is attractive.